Hello learners, I'm Dr. Laila Simon from the Bhopal School of Social Sciences, and today together we are going to learn on what is sampling. In the overviews, we would look at what is sample, what is census, or we otherwise call it as population, what are the characteristics for a good sample, what is the sampling design process, probability and non-probability sampling procedures. So first, let's look at what is the difference between sampling and census. I would first go into what is census. It's the entire population. So if you want to do a research, say for example, I would like to know what is the views of students towards online teaching and learning happening. So what could be my population? My population could be all the students who are involved in the online procedures, not all the youths of Bhopal or maybe India. We need to be very specific. So we need to choose a population which actually has a contribution to the part of the survey that we are doing. It's the most useful for the reason that if n needs to be very small, I'm talking about small n, which is the population for which we are going to do a survey on a specific area. Or if we have a larger population, then the cost of making an error is always very high. Now, when we move on to what is a sample, we would find that it's that part of the contacting portion of the population, maybe a 10%, maybe a 25%. However, this would belong to whatever is the kind of the population we are wanting for the survey. It could be 10% in some cases and it could be 25% in other cases, depends on the situations. But here look at the controversy. It says it is best with very large sample, which means if the population is small and if we can have a sample which is of a larger size, the results could be much better. It also says that you need to have a homogeneous kind of population. I just took the example of students' opinion for online teaching. So what do you mean by this homogeneous population? So if I want to do a survey, I would let's take the example of BSS College. We want to do a survey on what is the opinion of the students for online teaching and learning process. So if I want to compare BSS with some other college, it should be a college that would be at par. So an Institute A and an Institute B, which are both at par in most of the backgrounds, would be termed as the homogeneous population. So again, a census is basically a population, and a population, if taken at a smaller number, would give better results. But on the other hand, sample is a part of the population, a percentage of the population, and if kept to a larger size, would definitely give a better result. We say that the population that we are taking over here and the sample that we have, the sample as a part of the population. So in fact, we can say the sample is the subset of the population, right? So we have the figures here, we have our populations, it's just represented by different colors, and a part of this each that we are taking into a smaller zone, a small part that we have taken it, will be termed as what you call it as sample. So it's important to know what could be the characteristics for a good sample. The first and the foremost is it needs to be representative. We are talking about a population. So this is my population. And we are talking about a sample which is a part of it. As I already said, this is a subset of the population. So every bit of sample that I'm going to take here should actually represent the population. So very important is it needs to be representative. Then comes accessible. If I want to find the online teaching effectiveness, I need to have a sample which I can easily access. I can go and get a survey done. I can administer the survey. So a sample should be of its kind which can be easily accessible. As I said, it needs to be homogeneous in nature. If a sample is not homogeneous in nature, there could be biasing happening, there could be a chance of a greater error happening. So homogeneity is another important characteristics for the requirement of a good sample. Another important one is how adequate it is. Do we have a sufficient sample that it is representing the population, so that the value for the sample that we are getting is actually the value for the population that is being taken for the survey. So you can have more than these characteristics, but however, few important characteristics for a good sample are: it needs to be representative, it needs to be accessible, it needs to be homogeneous in nature, and should have an adequate size. Let's look at what is the sampling process. So when we define a population, that's something very important. We need to take utmost care on how are we going to define the population. Once a population is being designed, we need to find out what could be the sampling frame. That's again very important because, as we said, the sample is actually the subset of the population. So the frame needs to be designed. Once the sampling frame has been designed, we need to find what could be the sampling procedures. Moving on to the sampling procedures, we have two sampling procedures. One is the probability sampling method and the other one is the non-probability sampling method. We'll be discussing one by one in the slides ahead. Just to have a quick look on what are the different kinds of probability sampling, we have simple random, we have systematic sampling, we have stratified sampling, we have cluster sampling. On the other hand, for a non-probability sampling, we have convenience sampling, or you call it convenience method, we have the judgmental, we have the quota based, and we have the snowball sampling. So once we are determined with the kind of the sampling procedures, we would determine the appropriate sample size, and that should be in accordance with the ratio of the population that we have. Once the sample size is being formulated or identified, we can execute the sampling design. Whatever is the method of sampling we would like to perform for administering the survey, we can go ahead with that. Let's look at what is this probability sampling. When I say probability, which means when a sample needs to be chosen, every member of the population will be confident that they can be part of that sample. So how do I define this sampling? A probability sampling scheme is one in which every unit in the population has a chance of being selected in the sample, which means there would be always more than 0 values in the sample, and it could be accurately determined. That's one reason why it's also known as random sampling. So, concluding probability sampling, I would say every individual or every unit that we need to put up into this sample can expect that it would definitely get a chance of being included in the sample. The first one in the probability sampling is the simple random sampling. What does this? It is being assumed as one of the purest form of probability sampling for the reason that they can be always available for a small size. It could be more accurate for a small size of a population, as we have already discussed. It needs to be homogeneous and should also be accessible, which means readily available, right? What we can do in this case, we can have a lottery system and pick up the sample units. Now look into this figure. This explains better. We have one sample here. This is the entire population, and I'm just picking up my sample. So I picked up one from here. I've not taken these two. I've taken the second one. I've not taken these three. So randomly, I can pick up the units for my simple random sampling procedures. So you'll find of this, these encircled ones, not in a definite pattern, are being chosen for being included in the sample. However, when we discuss about systematic sampling, with the word itself, it says systematic, which means there needs to be a specific order in which the selection needs to be taken. So it relies on arranging the target population according to some ordering scheme and then selecting them at regular intervals. So you can have an irregular start, you can have a random start, a random pick. Now you look at this. Here it's the one sample, and then moving on, we don't have the other two. We have the second one here. Then I've left the other two, then we have the third one. So initially I don't have any order, but once it begins, then there's a specific order. There's a systematic order in which the sample is being selected. So if I list the entire population into a roll numbers of 1 to 60, maybe I have 1 to 60. And then what I do is I need to find every fifth element I may pick. So when I begin with, there is no as such rule that I have to go by the fifth one, the first one. I can choose anyone randomly and then go for every alternate fifth one. So there is a system which was been followed. I have a roll numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I pick up the first one and then I go for the fifth one, or else I do the second one first and then go for the sixth one, and then I can go for every fifth element. So I'm just following an order in which the sample needs to be picked up. So that is the systematic sampling. When we move on to the stratified sampling, one important word that you need to remember is strata. So the population is being divided into specific units, a group, a strata. So I have a gender. If I have a gender kind of a thing, so what I would find, the male and the females that I can have, they would be falling into two different stratas. So if I said gender, then I have the male and the female. So all those under that could be one strata, all the others can be under the other strata. So wherever we are using or separating the groups using certain criteria, you call it as strata, then the sampling that comes into play is the stratified sampling. So here we have one group, maybe the males. I've taken this one member, I've taken the other member over here, and we have another group over here. We have taken one from this, another from here, and the from here. So we can pick up using our own methods and individually from the different stratas. The next important is cluster sampling. Again, which means it's a group now. The entire population is being divided into small groups. But remember one thing, what is very important here, this is on the basis of geographical continuity, which also needs to have a homogeneous group. So every cluster needs to be homogeneous and should be based on kind of a geographical factor. In cluster sampling, suppose say example, here we are taking, now I was talking about an online classroom. You know, what is the opinion of the students in the online classroom. So I say, oh, I'm going to divide it into different units. What does the students of Bhopal have to say on online teaching? What does the students of Jabalpur have to say on this on? So we have small clusters or small groups. And these three types of cluster sampling methods, we can have it in one-stage sampling, we can also have it in two-stage sampling, or we can also have it in multi-stage sampling. That was all about the probability sampling procedures. The next we have non-probability. So as I said, in probability, every unit expects a chance of being representative in the sample. But when it comes to non-probability sampling, here the sample are selected on the basis of non-random criteria, and not every member of the population gets a chance to be equally represented. So now what happens? Now you look at the advantages. It says it is more cheaper and it's more faster than what you have the probability sampling. And we agree to it that it is reasonably representative if it is being collected in a thorough manner. So the takeaway for non-probability sampling is that every unit of the sample expects that they know that there cannot be a chance that they will be included in the sampling. Now, the various procedures under this could be convenience sampling. Now, I gave an example of an online teaching opinion. What do? I would try to get convenient samples. I would start asking students who are very near to me or very easily approachable, and that adds to the convenience of the survey. And that is one reason most of the time convenience sampling is always taken as to be a biased in nature. You look at this figure, it explains more. I can find the people, the respondents who are very near to me, and I can get the answers to the questions that I have. So like I can ask the people of a specific characteristics, or maybe students in the class. I just finish it off because I want to have a sample which may be 60, 70 or 80 or a 200. So how can I gather this sample in the most convenient way? So I go by doing. Now again, one important important thing that is associated with the convenience way of sampling is that it just happens because those respondents happen to be in the right place at the right time when I wanted to administer the survey. So that's simple. So a convenience way of sampling is the most easiest way of getting a survey administered. Next is the judgmental sampling. It's almost like the kind of convenient way of sampling methods. But then, here the researcher uses his own expertise and judge and try to select people to get the answers to his research problems or research questions. This is mostly done Basically when you want to have, this is an expert in this area and this person would be able to give me my answers. So wherever it could be, I have an online, as I take the same example as an online assessment, we are talking about student opinion about online classes. If I want to do it in India, how would I do? I would have the access to few people across India who would be into the online teaching and the learning process, and I would use my own expertise and I would use my own judgment to get my response. So here I'm judging that these people are the best people who can give me my answers, and I just administer the survey. However, many a times this won't be a right way of sampling. As I've already said, convenience way of method is not a right way in most cases. Similarly, the judgmental is also not always the right way. It can go wrong, but however, in some cases, they are perfect. The next comes the snowball sampling. When the ball rolls on the snow, you'll find that there's more of ice getting onto and the ball becomes larger in diameter. Exactly this is what we do in snowball sampling. Me as a researcher would identify few researchers. I want to do research in country A and country B. I can identify the experts in these two countries and I can identify them and tell them to get some responses in the same areas of expertise and help me out to administer my survey. So it's helping me to get a bigger sample each time when I get into more than 1 or 2 or 3 experts at different areas. Where do we use this? We use it especially in areas where I am not able to reach these research respondents directly. So it says it's an initial group of respondents is selected in this case, usually at a random method, and that is what they call it as a snowball. And as I already told you, that more and more snow gets added on, so that helps me to get a bigger and bigger sample size. Hence the name snowball sampling. We move on to what is now the quota sampling. With the name itself, it says quota. That represents that there would be a set of or a group of people who can be taken, divided into in a population. Now looking at this, I have now divided this into 3 quotas. I have the adult males, I have the adult females, and I have the children. Now among these divisions, I can choose representatives to be part of my sample. And when I do this, I term it as the quota sampling. Most of the time, it is being viewed as 2-staged and is restricted purely to a kind of judgmental sampling. So, this was the entire schedules that was planned up for today, that what is sampling, what is a population, how is it different from sample, what are the characteristics of a good sample, what is a sample design process, the importance of probability and non-probability sampling. That's all for this session. Thanks a lot for watching.